And we're on. So hello and welcome to today's Football Collective Double Bill. In this hour we're discussing recreational community football, and at 3 p.m. we're listening to the latest goings on at the Women's Game Network. My name's Peter Millward and I'll be chairing both sessions in this double bill. So for this hour we're exploring the benefits of recreational community football to key stakeholders. These include business, themselves and the entire local community. We're picking this up to discuss how human social conscience can be intertwined with the desire to participate in football. And to do this, we're drawing on an expert view offered by Chris Roberts, co-founder of the North Wales Dragons men's and women's community football teams, Anna Roberts, who I asked Chris before if they were related, and they're not, but who's a member of the North Wales Dragons advisory team and co-founder of the Dragons women's football team, and Gemma Whittaker, who isn't related to them either. A founding member of a football community team, Infinity Initiatives, who campaign to get people acknowledging and addressing mental health. As is the norm, I'll ask the questions for the first 30 minutes or so, and then I'll hand over to the virtual floor. If you've got any questions, please feel free to pop them in the comment box whenever, and I'll invite you to ask them when it's appropriate when I hand over to the virtual floor. So, without further ado, I'll hand over to each of the panelists. So could you please introduce yourselves and tell me a bit about your organisation? So we'll start with Chris.
Hi, thanks very much for letting us be a part of this afternoon. We really appreciate it. We're honoured to come along, share our bit of a story. What happened was, going back 11 years ago, I was working with Sheffield Football Club on a totally different side of things. And when I was working with them, they were involved with Boots for Africa. That was their charity at the time. And they asked me if we knew of a way of raising money for charity for Boots for Africa. And back then we said that we didn't. But come Hogmanay, New Year's Eve, my eldest son was away in Scotland and he said, I know how we're going to raise money for charity. He said, we're going to have a football match. So I said, who with? So he said, oh, well, there's a bunch of lads up here in Scotland. They'll come down and they'll come and have a game. So he said, you're into project management. He said, you can set up the event. You can set up a raffle, an auction and what have you. We'll get a charity, we'll get an after dinner speaker along. And he said, well, we'll see if we can raise some money this way. So anyway, a few months went by, the lads came down from Scotland and we got hammered off the park 10-0. We got our like classy football kit and they came down with all their track suits with their numbers on the side and their initials on and what have you. But we got Howard Kendall to come along as an after dinner speaker. And we had the auction, we had the raffle, and we actually raised £2,500 on this particular night. And we loved it. And we thought, you know what, we'll do this again. So 12 months came along and we decided Boots for Africa would be the focus of the charity again. But also Help for Heroes showed some interest. So they said, you know, would you mind playing and see if you can raise some money for us at the same time? So we did. And before you knew it, we were kind of getting more and more interest in what we were doing. We started playing more games. And just recently, just prior to lockdown, we had our 10th anniversary last year, but just prior to lockdown, we'd almost reached 100 football matches. So that's briefly to where we're up to today, how we started. And then going back about, I think it's about 5-6 years ago, we bumped into Hannah at a networking meeting. And I'll just let Hannah explain a bit more now about, you know, what her role is and what her journey has been with us so far.
Thanks, Chris.
Yes, please, over to Hannah.
Yeah, so as Chris mentioned, I was at a networking event. So I just finished studying at university back to Wrexham, and I was just doing my further studies at Manchester. but living in Wrexham. And I think at the time I was sort of looking for like how to start my career, where I wanted to move towards. And I suppose like I started to realise the kind of privileged position I'd managed to get myself in, where I had options. And the community that I grew up in, you know, there are people with a lot of problems like addiction, mental health. There's not very much support. There aren't very many community projects. And I suppose I was in a position where I felt like I wanted to find a way to sort of use my skill set for good as well. And I knew it was probably going to be difficult to do that in my everyday work. And my interest was more in sort of analytics and sports. And then I was volunteering at a charity in Wrexham, and then went along to a networking event, bumped into Chris, heard about what they were doing, and sort of said, you know, how can I help? Like, my skill set is like being able to measure and understand impact. I'm good with technology. Like, how can we bring those two skill sets together? And then Chris told me that, you know, all about their journey and what they were doing so far, and that they wanted to grow and expand and help more people and demonstrate the impact of what they've done. And I said, well, let me come in and write you an impact report and speak to all the players and show people like the benefits of community football, not just in terms of fundraising, but in terms of the benefits on the individuals taking part, the benefits for the volunteers. And let's try and get more and more people involved, because it's just such a good project. And you know, when resources are tough and the councils and governments can't offer these as much support, the fact that someone like Chris has just given up his time to try and do something amazing, I was like, let me help. And then we kind of just went from there, right? And somehow I've managed to use my non-football related skills to help out. So yeah, and maybe going forward I can use my very limited football skills on the women's team, but I don't know if we can call that a skill.
Thank you, Hannah. Can we hand over to Jem for Jem to give her introduction?
Hi, yeah, my name's Gemma, and I founded an organisation called Infinity Initiatives. I started it in 2015. I used to work for the local authority, both in the crime and disorder field. Got a bit sick of not being able to help people in the way that I wanted to. The same individuals and families were coming round. My dad died, and it was a real kick up the bum for me to grab life and do something that I really loved. So I set Infinity Initiatives up, and over time it's just developed into what it is now. And we've got 2 branches, one in Greater Manchester, one in Llandudno and Conway. So in terms of the football, we offer an alternative education programme to young people, particularly those who are leaving care or who are not in full-time education, where mainstream education doesn't suit them, doesn't suit the learning needs. And they've been told it's because of their behaviour, and quite often it's not. It's just because of the way they're being educated. So they'll come to us and we look at what they're interested in, whether that be the arts or sports, anything really, and we tailor make our programmes around the young people. And what we found very, very early on, not just actually with the kids, but some of the people who come into our Ever Pay What You Can cafe, when we've done recreational activities, people thrived in that environment. So even though they'd always been described as, oh, they're very anti-authority, they won't answer to authority, they still wanted some level of discipline. And that's what we could bring through sport in a fun way, in a competitive way. And we just saw, you know, in terms of recovery from addiction as well, it's such a powerful tool. Fast forward a couple of years, and I had a young man who was volunteering for me, very passionate about football, and he was talking about some people he knew, some of his friends, where they'd suffered loss of jobs, unemployment, debt, and bereavement. That, you know, a parent had died, and he said what's really getting them through is the training, coming to training twice a week, being around the friends. And I said, have you not considered setting up a football club and playing competitively? But it's so much work, it's so expensive. So we got our heads together and we decided if we could form a community football team, we could look at external funding, we could get sponsors, we could bring in local businesses, and we could really use it as an opportunity to shout about the therapy, I suppose, the therapy that football and being around people can bring. So that's just gone fantastic. We play competitively now. We're in a league. We don't do so well in that league, but we're new. But that's not the point. We're getting out there. We've got asylum seekers, refugees coming on board, and it's amazing because you've got these people who are trying to support through the week with the needs, with the food, with the therapy, and language is such a barrier. But when they're on the pitch, it's just that international language, isn't it, of just coming together, and we're loving it, and we're just going from strength to strength. Met Chris networking, and then I met Hannah, and we're now looking at coming together and seeing what we can do in North Wales. Chris was approached by Making Sporting Memories, you would have heard about, and they work with people who are from an older generation or where there's dementia, and again using sport as a tool for engagement. And Chris has asked us to come on board and partner up with North Wales Dragons on that project. So we're really looking forward to it. We're ready to go and we can't because of the lockdown, but we're ready out. So yeah, so there's lots of plans we've got, and lots of success stories already.
Thank you. So I've got a follow-up question. I think it goes to all three of you, in fact, but it's that point that you've all three of you raised about that kind of social conscience of the football club and of the project. How do you ensure that never gets lost or never gets watered down? So can I go with Chris first with that?
Yeah, the social conscience side of things seems to be ramping up, if anything. And I think it's what Jem mentioned before and what Hannah mentioned about lockdown. And lockdown has had a terrific effect on people's mental health, people's circumstances and what have you. And the inquiries that we've got in at the moment are, they're unprecedented. I know that's a word that's been used quite often during this period, but truly, the inquiries out there at the moment of people wanting some kind of help. The social conscience, I think it's actually increasing a lot now. And I think with the start of the women's football team as well, I think it just gives us another avenue to actually spread the word. So yeah, I would say well on the increase of anything.
And there's a question that's coming around for Hannah around the impact reports, and I suppose I'm going to tweak the question a little bit. Could you tell us a little bit about what the impact reports say in a bit more detail?
Yeah, so the idea of the impact report, I suppose, ties into the question that you just had around how do you make sure that the social conscience is, for everything that you're doing. And the idea of the impact report was to help demonstrate what benefit having a community football team can bring, and help bring that to life for people. Because sometimes if you say, we had this football match and we raised this money, like that's a very tangible output. But there are so many other benefits that charity football can bring, or community football, and that's kind of how we help to keep the football. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to support everyone playing on the team. Like we did a survey with the players, and we asked them, what's the benefits that you got from playing? What were the barriers to going into league football, and why did you choose to come to the Dragons? What's changed in your life because of the Dragons? And the players it was anonymous, and the players were very open and honest, and they revealed that almost everybody on the team had a different reason for being there, but they'd all been impacted and affected positively. And I think that's, being able to talk about the mental health benefits of football is on the increase. And you see the Heads Up campaign now on like mainstream TV, and being able to demonstrate the impact of what you do helps to keep you focused in a way, because it stops the message just always being about raising money. There are a lot more impacts and benefits of community football. And then sometimes the impact reports look at then sort of the benefits to the sort of socio-economic benefits to the local environment. So by hosting a tournament, how many extra visitors do do you get to that location, and then what do they do when they're there? What do they see? So we sent out a survey after one of the North Wales Dragons events to say, you know, is this the first time you visited the local area? Would this make you come back? So we look at those kind of benefits as well, and then benefits to the volunteers. What kind of benefits do they see from the football? And I think going forward, like as I've learned more and understand more about how to measure impact and how to make it engaging when you visualize it, then that's what Chris and I are now looking to do a bit more as well. Is we've sort of learned as we've gone along, you know, because sometimes when you do an event, you don't necessarily collect information, so then you can't measure it. So now each time we do it every year, we gain a bit more knowledge, and hopefully going forward, we're going to move it online and make it more sort of interactive. So the first one we ever published was a sort of a PDF hard copy. So we're hoping to move now with the technology and get ourselves online. So that'll be the next focus.
Thank you, Hannah. And a question for Jem, if I may, which is, what do you think it is about football that provides such a useful hook to be able to help people in terms of addictions and mental health issues? There's something particular about football, isn't there, that is really conducive to helping people in that way?
Yeah, I think it comes down to being part of something, being included, being part of a team, having that competitive nature. If you've got it, being able to express it in that way. And if you've got an obsessive nature as well, you know, because we do know football can be quite obsessive, and it allows people to channel that energy in that way. What we see a lot is people often use the gym or work or whatever as a distraction for the mental health, and they'll pour everything into that. And we were very careful that we didn't shift it from them doing that into just doing it, you know, into the football. So the teams will have a WhatsApp group, we'll go out on socials, we'll try and encourage people to have a life and a kind of society around football, with football maybe being at the core or being at the start or laying the foundation, but not being everything. You know, it's there as a tool really. And going back to the other question as well about the social, not letting it get watered down, what we see very much so, again, it's about inclusion, and it's about that co-production and co-design, and including people, really, not saying, right, that's your position, that's what you're playing, this is what we're doing. It really is a team in every sense of the word, and we're developing the work that we do together. And it doesn't matter if you don't speak our language, it doesn't matter if you don't come to every football game, your mental health might not allow you to do that. You're not going to be made to feel guilty about that. But you're finding people want to, that sometimes the less pressure you put on people, the more they respond. And when you're saying to people, you can give this to us, and identifying skills in people that have got lost or not been identified or not been shouted about for so many years, people thrive. And we're really seeing that. So we've got a lad from Albania who spoke very little English when he first came, and the lads just rallied round him, got him some football boots and everything that he needed. And then we've gone to local businesses and asked for sponsorship, and they've been really obliging. You know, people can see what we're doing in the local area and they want to put their name to it now. So it really is, it's not just about on the pitch stuff, is it? You know, I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but it's just about it. That's just a starting point, really. Some of my niggles with it, I'm part of I'm on the trustee board for a foundation as well that is attached to a local football club, and I'm not talking about them when I say this, but what I'm seeing a lot of is lots of these foundations that are popping up attached to football clubs, and them being token partnerships, really, rather than actually working with the clubs and delivering projects together. They sit independently financially, but you know, I thought the intention was that they would work more closely together. Round here, one of our massive problems is around facilities. We can't, the pitches are terrible. The ones that you have to rent are just unaffordable, really unaffordable. So there's still a lot of work to be done with the local authority, for example, in terms of pushing this. And we're trying to get a meeting with our local MP, Angela Rayner, who was actually, you know, part of the cabinet, shadow cabinet, and her role's around education, and I really want to drive home the message that we're using this as an education tool locally, and we're doing fantastic stuff, but we need better facilities to do it on, and we're not asking for Old Trafford, you know, but we want something where the lads don't have to do a litter pick half an hour before every game and go out there with the spades and flats and because it's all very well and good, and you know the lads go, oh, we don't mind. It's not, we shouldn't have to do that really. It's it needs to be recognised as the tool that it is and the good that it's doing.
And one of the problems, I guess, going forward would be that local authority budgets are unlikely to grow, and often sports facilities are amongst those that diminish, aren't they? You know.
Yeah, but you know, it just feels, you know, we just want a field that's safe, and really when we look at it, if we can do some kind of cost benefit analysis, the money that they're putting into tackling antisocial behaviour and the alternative education programmes for the kids when they've been kicked out of school, you know, let's put some into the preventative work. And it doesn't just have to be used for football, you know, we can use it for community gatherings and lots of outdoor kind of stuff. So that's us at the moment, really pushing for that locally.
Great. And I wonder if I could ask you all individually to talk me through a key success that you've been involved in and connected to your football clubs or your initiatives. I'll start with Hannah this time.
I think for me, when I, very early on when I was working with Chris and the Dragons, one of the first things we sat down and spoke about was about how the Dragons could understand what their impact could be. So I think, as Chris mentioned, because of the sort of origins of the team, it was about playing football and raising money, and that in itself was amazing. But then what they wanted was to understand how they could have a wider impact, and then how they could then get more and more opportunities to play football, essentially. And I think one of the biggest successes would be that this year, or pre-lockdown anyway, Chris and the North Wales Dragons had enough games to play without them going out and finding games. That people were coming to them to say, we see the value in what you're doing and we want to be part of it. And I think that in itself just made me really proud. I think during the Dragons' 10-year anniversary, to look at that year and see that the calendar was full because people saw the value in what we were doing, for me was just one of the proudest moments. And I think when we looked at the volume of games and the money that was raised and the reach, we just see it going up every year, and I think that for me feels like success, and I think you would agree, Chris.
I can understand that. Chris, does that chime with you?
Oh, definitely so. Hannah and I had a mad conversation. We were in a cafe and we were sat down talking. And like I say, I suppose the way that this started was purely by accident. And then we brought it so far, and I was sharing some of the details with Hannah, and she said to me, do you know what you need to do? You need to do an impact report. So I said, why? So she said, well, just to show what it is that you've done, how far you've come. So I said, yeah, but we've just done this, we've just done that. And she said, you really need to write it down. And Hannah will tell you, I was quite hesitant at first. And she said, you know what? She said, I'll go away, I'll do it. And then she said, I'll come back. And she said, I bet you'll be surprised. Well, when she came back and presented this impact, it was quite amazing, and you think to yourself, good grief, look at what we've achieved. And I'm going back now to 4 years ago when we did this. And since then, we've actually gone from strength to strength. And as Hannah rightly said, we've got people who are, we had games that were filled up every month before lockdown. We had tournaments that were arranged this year that we've had to cancel. But we know that we don't have to go out there looking for games now. People will actually come to us, and they want us to play them. And conversely, what we're in a lucky position that we have players who want to play for us as well. So we know, we know that we can fulfil the human social responsibility from both directions, really.
Great. And over to Gemma.
I think
success.
I think that something that I'm really proud of is the impact we've had on other local teams and teams who might want to start up but maybe didn't know how to, or between us we've formed a local network and we're supportive of one another, so we'll share pitch hire fees, say, and train together. If somebody's stuck or a couple of men short for a game, someone from another team will step in, and from another community football team will step in, and they've just, there's such a bond there. There's two teams locally who both set up following the death of the child, and they came together, and they're using it as we are to promote that kind of message that you're not on your own, and we can get together, we can have a pint, a career, we can go for a walk, we can play football, we can do all this. And if you're ready for accessing talking therapies, for example, you can do. If you're not ready for that, there's no solution, is there? There's no one answer to going through grief or mental health. And it's just been really good to see how the teams have all kind of grown together. And we had, the season was a week late starting last season, and our team were raring to go. So one of the friends said, well, we'll play you this weekend, we'll have a charity game, we'll all put a fiver in, and we'll play. So they formed a second team made up of just mates and guys from the pub, and they loved it that much. The second team, they stayed together and played, and they've just now joined the same league that we're in. So they've developed just by a one-off match, and throughout the year they've been walking, raising money for us, talking about what we're doing and dyeing the hair blue, mad stuff, but things that'll just get the message out there, really. Like, let's talk about it, let's at least acknowledge it. If we're not going to talk about it, let's acknowledge mental health.
And you mentioned before, Gemma, that one of the biggest challenges were the facilities and the pitches that are sometimes in not a great state. Are there any other big challenges?
That's the biggie for us, and obviously the ongoing funding that's required. I mean, we can just have a kick about. We never want to take it away from that. It's not about money, it's about coming together. But it can be so expensive, even for people to get from one place to another logistically. We are trying to reach out to people who are quite isolated or who are like refugee and asylum seekers. That's something I'm really passionate about. And they don't have the funds or the transport to get to places. So logistics sometimes can be an issue as well in terms of joining a team. But we do it together, we do it through fundraising, we get small pots, we're quite savvy in our, like I said, we've gone for sponsorships so we can get new kits. We're using that as an opportunity as well. We've approached Kick It Out to see if we can have their logo on their arms. So we're now registered as, I think it's like a community partner. So we've just gone through that process. So we'll be having Kick It Out logo on our arm as well next season. And trying to piggyback campaigns, like the Rainbow Laces campaign, we would do that, and anything we can, because it's not just, because mental health, it's over everything, isn't it? It's everything we can think of. It can have a negative or a positive impact on your mental health. So we don't want to just be a charity that's saying, let's get men talking about mental health. It's about, let's use football as a tool to raise awareness of all these fantastic causes and, all these issues that we're all faced with day to day.
We've got friends from the FSA on later. I wonder, it's not really a question, it's just a comment, but I wonder if the FSA might be able to help you as well as Kick It Out.
Yeah.
The Football Supporters Association.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So to Chris and Hannah, what's some of the biggest challenges you faced in your work with North Wales Dragons? So I'll go with Chris first.
I think Jem's hits it on the head there, because when we go and play our away games, we go to the likes of Sheffield, Nottingham, Derby, Scotland. Some of the places that we played at, Sheffield was a classic example. We played in a park, and the changing pavilion had been burnt down. So we had to get changed on a park bench. The field that we played on, I won't call it a football ground, the field that we played on was full of potholes. It was full of rubbish. It was full of stuff that, paraphernalia, I'll call it. And we had to clean it up before we could play on it. And really, we should have stopped. We couldn't have carried on because it was quite dangerous. It was quite dangerous to play. But we all agreed that we'd come a long way. We'd driven 3 hours, and it was all for charity. So it's what we did. But we've come across this in a fair number of places. Locally, we've got a relationship with London Football Club, and they've been very good to us. So we've got a 4G pitch there that's open to us when it's not being used, by the club itself and for all their activities. So we can find ourselves playing at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. We'll play for 90 minutes on a Sunday. So, conversely, while we've got some bad stuff out there, we've got some really good stuff here. Yeah, I would say facilities is probably is our major obstacle as well.
And Hannah, does that broadly tally with your views too?
Yeah, although I suppose at the moment we're trying to establish like a women's branch to the team as well. We've got a new challenge really, which would have been the original challenge, maybe that Chris and the guys faced sort of before I joined when they were establishing the men's team, is how to engage people. And with women's sport, there are sort of similar barriers, there are very different barriers, and we've just got to figure out how to address them and how to get people involved, and I suppose demonstrate to them why they should get involved and why it's a safe place, and I suppose understand what would motivate people and women to come and join the team, and then try to get the word out. So yeah, we've got a new challenge to face there as well, and then I suppose once we become established, we'll face then all the same barriers and issues around facilities. But at the moment, the current challenge is engagement. But we've got a lot of expertise to take from when the men's team was set up, so we can learn from the successes and the mistakes there, and hopefully over the next couple of years that will strength to strength as well.
And so moving on to back to Jem with this, but I think all three of you have mentioned COVID, lockdown, social distancing, and alluded to some of its impacts. But Gemma, if I could ask you what specific impacts it might have had in terms of the work that you can do, but also how acute the issues that you're addressing are becoming, even more pronounced through periods where people have been on their own.
Yeah, people are terribly isolated. Those who would normally use our cafe just for socialising, really. We've kept in touch with people as much as we can over the phone, doing visits to the house with food, just particularly in the early days when it was, no one knew whether they should be in or out or what. So we've been able to keep connected with people, but I think that's because of the way we are. When you visit us at Infinity, we come across as very informal, and behind the scenes obviously we're not like that, but it's a very friendly kind of community within a community. So people have been accepting that we are going to be keeping in touch, and they don't feel like a charity case. The football has been something completely different. Obviously the lads haven't been able to practice. The ones who kind of our main team, our core team, they've been keeping in touch via WhatsApp, and they've been keeping that support going. What we found was there was a lot of the other people, refugee and asylum seekers particularly, who weren't digitally connected. So we put in for a small pot of money to get that, whether it be smartphones, data, internet access, because a lot of people were missing out on the education, the English lessons they were going to at the local church, and all sorts. So we only got £1,000. It was a small pot of money, but then we used that to publicise the work we were doing on the digital connection programme. So people were coming to us and saying, I've got a smartphone you can have. So it kick-started a much bigger project where we were able to then And I think that's it. When people say, oh, you know, we don't need a lot of money, you really don't. Sometimes you just need a little bit of seed funding to get something off the ground. And then if you can shout about it enough, and if you can hit the right people, you know, people will come together. On the whole, people want to help and support and become more in tune to what is going on in the local area. So that's been really good, you know, and now they're back training. But where we were training over 2 days, now we've had to kind of look at doing it over 4 days. So we've got smaller numbers.
Thank you. And Gemma and Chris, you mentioned that you were due to collaborate, but COVID had put that on ice a little.
Yeah.
Chris, I wonder if you, well, Gemma, Chris, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that collaboration.
Well, we've planned a charity football match, haven't we? We've planned a match, hadn't we? That we wanted to use to publicise the work that we're doing in Conway.
Okay.
Which is mostly around counselling in Conway. It's a smaller team and it's a newer team, so we really wanted to use it as an opportunity to celebrate in the local area and have a bit of a fun day at Llandudno Football Club and bring people together. But unfortunately we couldn't do it. It was right at the start, wasn't it, Chris, as well? So it was a bit, the lads really wanted to do it, but I was probably too, well, I'm not saying too cautious, but I was seen as being too cautious. But Chris and I made the decision that actually let's put it on hold, because it wouldn't have been as intended and we needed to do it justice. So we had a game on Twitter of noughts and crosses instead, didn't we? So we did that, and that was fun, and it just gave the lads a chance to still keep connected. And then, like I said, we're looking at doing making sporting memories together and offering that to people of Conway. And from that, I've been looking at dementia projects across North Wales, and I'm now part of the dementia board in Denbigh. So they're making connections there. So it's brilliant, really. It just snowballs. If you let it snowball, you can your audience can just get bigger and bigger, and you can help more people.
That's absolutely fantastic. I did notice that David had a question. David put a question in the group chat. David, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I just want to say to the three of you, everything you've presented so far, just such an inspiration, so exciting, and I've got 1,001 questions, but I'll try to pack it into one thing that I think all three of you could address with this. You've been talking about community in really interesting ways, and the idea of an impact analysis, I think, in terms of trying to validate and justify things, and the difficulty of drawing on external funding, whether it's public or private. Very often an impact analysis is going to be really important in terms of justifying any further funding, right? Especially in times of austerity. But I'm wondering to what degree shared values need to be at the essence of that sense of community, or Jen, you just said community within a community. I'm working on a project right now 3 hours north of New York City in a very rural area where the closest community-based club right now is about 30 miles away. And I had to meet, this has all been put on pause for at least another few months because of COVID. But a meeting Sunday, somebody who owns a local baseball team said to me, "You're trying to change the culture." And he said it in a positive way, but he's quite right. We're trying to change the culture. The newest team 30 miles west of us actually happens to be named after a Bosnian Serb convicted war criminal. So you can clearly see what that values are for that community-based club if they're named after a convicted war criminal. So I'm wondering how you articulate those things. I think it was readily apparent for the baseball owner that met with me Sunday in our group. We have a vision statement, we have a mission statement, and I'm wondering if you could speak to those kinds of models of governance, and also, Hannah, how it seems to me like your impact analysis seems very autotelic, right? And that doesn't seem like it's the external funding that you are really concerned about trying to answer their validation of budgeting, but more, okay, this is what we do and this is what we're doing. And it almost seems like your impact analysis was able to find out things that you wouldn't even have known were happening. I hope that bundles and packages things up. And can we call that a question? Thanks.
Well, I answer that bit first, then I suppose, yeah, and I think for us, it's it's been a journey of learning about measuring and understanding impact as well. So when I first started with the Dragons, I was sort of fresh out of university. I didn't have a lot of experience on measuring and understanding impact. I'm a maths student. I love technology. I love data visualization. I love sports. So like that's what I do in my current role. Like I own a sports data company. So I've managed to learn as I've been going along there and then apply those principles to the Dragons. So when you're right in saying when we did that first impact analysis, it was more about exploring the impact that we'd had. Whereas now moving forward, as we try to grow the reach of the Dragons and as we collaborate with partners, then it's more now about identifying the aims and objectives of the people who are trying to get involved. So like you said, especially when you collaborate with a club, like clubs have their own philosophy and they have their own vision and mission. So now we are starting to sort of turn it around and say, okay, as a club, what do you want to achieve? Like what's important to you? And then how can we help? And then how can we demonstrate that? I suppose for us, it's something we've learned as we've gone along. And as I've sort of grown in my career and I learn more about the industry, I've then been able to apply that back to the Dragons. So, you know, now if we looked at that first impact assessment that we did, maybe we would look at it and think, actually, did we come at it from the wrong angle? But I suppose we just did what we thought was right at the time and based on what we knew. But yeah, I think it's a really good point as well about how we maybe change the way we analyze impact now that we've got a kind of different focus as well.
I just want to add really quickly too, just to, you know, for other, this is recorded and people may see it, you know, years from now or whatever. When I was president of a community-based club, just, you know, about 15 miles north of New York City, in the suburbs, and there was a really prime piece of real estate right along the banks of the Hudson River, right next to the train station. And the local municipality that was granting us the field space only wanted us to do training there, not any matches. So then I used economic impact analysis to show the benefit to local businesses, and that opened the door to allow us to hold matches there. So yeah, just a simple tool like that can be so helpful in terms of, you know, because it is all about space. You got to have the space to do what you want to do. So yeah.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Hannah. Any further questions from the floor? Okay. I have a further question. I mean, you're all doing such great work, but this great work, working with people, can often be tiring. Do you find it hard to fit everything into the day? Yeah.
Shall I go?
Yeah.
Shall I go on that one? Okay.
Yes, please.
I have a full-time job anyway, so I work in the university. I'm a mechanical engineer. So I have a full-time day job that's full on. But when I come home and I have my tea and I then put my Dragons hat on, the Dragon stuff is so enjoyable that it doesn't feel like work whatsoever. And it's hard. It really is hard work. But when you've got the likes of Hannah who helps us out, I've got other people around me who help out as well. And you've got Jem as well, who help out from a different point of view. So when you've got everybody together and we're working, you know, you've got 3 people here in this room now. You've got David over there in New York as well. You know, all this kind of thing, it's all a network and we all learn off each other. And as we learn off each other, things become easier. And like I say, you know, there are days when it's hard work. There are days when you think, this is tiring, I could do with doing something else or what have you. But no, it's what gets you to kick your legs out of bed every day.
And Jem, I noticed you nodded when I asked that question.
Yeah, I'm knackered. Yeah, I mean, this is it is a small part of my day job, if you like. You know, it's the counselling service we have, we've got a dozen counsellors on board, and so probably, you know, if they've got 2 free clients each, and managing that alone is a full-time job. So so again, I think it's a passion of mine. So like Chris, you know, I echo everything Chris has just said. It absolutely, it can be your driver sometimes. I have to sometimes remind myself what we've got to do. So like when our insurance premium was up, for example, and I'm saying to the lads, don't train on that awful field, because if you fall over, just wait till the new insurance has come through. And it's having to remind yourself of all those little things as well, rather than just getting too kind of sucked into the magic that's the game.
Keeping all the plates spinning.
Yeah, and from all the different angles, and you know, like Hannah said, shouting about the work and showing the impact that it's having on the community, on local businesses, on the prevention of ASB addiction and ill health. You know, Tameside, where we're from in Tameside, it's in the top 10 for so much, for all the wrong reasons, for antisocial behaviour, unemployment rates, low attainment rates in terms of GCSEs, heart conditions. It's really up there. So we need to take some responsibility. You know, as business owners, as residents, as mums and dads, we need to take some responsibility for that and all do our bit. So it's even if it's a small bit, you know, like we spoke about so many times today, it's that ripple effect that it can have. Just doing a little bit of something just rolls out.
Thank you. So as we wind up, I was wondering if you could help us all by telling us where we can find out a bit more about your football teams, about your organisation. So if we go with Hannah.
So Chris leads the way in terms of social media and the website. So I'll let him tell you all about that. But I suppose from my side, one of the things we're going to focus on over the next couple of months is, like I said, maybe bringing to life some of the impact reports online on the website. So hopefully then people will be able to learn a bit more about what we see as our impact and what our aims and objectives are going forward. But in terms of sort of the organising of events and tournaments and games, Chris is the social media sort of guru there. So I'll let him.
Great. Thank you. So Chris, can you tell us about social media and your guru-esque activities on there?
Yeah. Guru-esque, that's quite a terminology. We actually did a lot of work on Twitter. Twitter isn't the same as it used to be now. It's very politically led, unfortunately. It was a good to be, and it was a great place to be for creating contact. We did a hard awareness campaign going back, and one of the things that we managed to get is would anyone help? And we had a tweet from Davina McCall saying, I'll help. And we thought, you know, Davina McCall, is this right or whatever? Anyway, we just let it go. We didn't bother anymore. And we had a message from her saying, have you contacted my management company? So we said no. So she gave me the contact for a management company and said, you need to call them and arrange something. So we called them, and she officially became one of our heart warriors. You know, it's not the greatest terminology of it all, but you know, it's an example about how social media can work in your favour. So we're on Twitter as at NWales Dragons, and I think if you just do a search for North Wales Dragons on the internet, we do come up. Fortunately, we do come up quite frequently. So you can find anywhere on that. And if anyone wants to drop me a line, you know, I'll be happy to connect and answer whatever you need us to answer.
Brilliant, thank you. And Gemma, you're on mute.
Yeah, we're on Twitter. So we have a page for ourselves and for the football team, both on Twitter and Facebook. So I've put it in the comments anyway, the links. But I've put my email address in there as well if anybody wants to at any time drop me a line about anything. I'm happy to pass on the number and have a chat outside of here.
Great, that's superb. So all that's left to say is to thank you very much. Thank you for a great session. That was really, really informative and inspiring too. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate it.
No problem whatsoever. No problem whatsoever.
Cheers.